episode 13 of the Woke-ish podcast. This is Ebony.
And this is Alma.
And this week we are going to be discussing, tons of sad things. But the question that we'll be addressing is, are we numb? And thinking about how American society responds to violence or doesn't respond to violence, or just kind of just responds to atrocities, like things that we should kind of be emotionally responsive to, and we don't.
Yeah.
But before we get there, we'll start out on a somewhat positive or more positive note with our shout out segment.
Yes.
So first, I want to give a shout out to Houston and the Harris County Jail, which, talking about folks in jail is always kind of sad, particularly talking about folks of color. But at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, 80 inmates, all dressed up in blue caps and gowns, graduated from Houston Community College. Each of them earned a certificate of completion for various high-demand vocational courses like warehousing and OSHA. The educational program provided by HCC inside the Harris County Jail are voluntary. Admission in the program is competitive and available to pretrial detainees who must pass a trio of tests. The materials are paid for by an inmate's commissary and HCC itself. Graduates of the program have access to HCC services like job placement and continued education, which is, awesome, I think, because I've heard that the educational component has kind of been taken out of the jails and prisons over the last few decades, so I was very surprised by this. And the Harris County Sheriff, Ed Gonzalez, said, these are human beings. These are individuals that have a skill. While they're here, we try to make a difference so they can make a difference. And I think that's awesome. There were in this article, there were tons of quotes from some of the inmates who were saying that, while they feel like, their being there was warranted and they've done X, Y, and Z, they appreciate the opportunity to be able to better themselves and to have access to opportunities once they're released. So I think that, more opportunities like this would decrease the recidivism rates, and which basically is just the likelihood that they would get out, commit more crime because they aren't able to get a job or aren't able to, get an education, and then end up back in jail. So I think we need to really, start implementing more programs like this in jails and in prisons so that, people are able to be productive once they're out.
Yes. And so our second shout out is to Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. If you don't know who she is a newcomer who beat Representative Joe Crowley in the New York primary. And what makes her so awesome is that she's Latina activist and member of the Democratic Socialists of America. So she's not your typical Democrat. And she won over the voters in the minority majority district. I think it's the Bronx and Queens. Even as Crowley, the fourth ranking Democrat in the House and said to be taking over Nancy Pelosi's spot, outraised her by a 10-1 margin. What's also really significant is that this was the first time in 14 years that a member of his own party had attempted to unseat him. Mm-hmm. I think she even said there hadn't been an election in that many years because no one had ever really ran against him. And so what I find incredible is she didn't use any corporate lobby money and proves that grassroots organizations can work. And so I saw the video where she found out she won. And she was genuinely surprised she won. And so as soon as she saw that she realized that she won, the first thing she did was she thanked everyone who voted for her. Mm-hmm. And I remember following her tweets, and she said that there was 20 minutes left until polling closed, and she said that she encountered two men of color who told her that they voted for her, and she emphasized that, statistics and a lot of research showed her that she should not be quote unquote wasting her resources on people who were most likely not to vote during a midterm. But that's what actually got her win. And so there's a hashtag that's called Rise to the Ocasio, which is kind of like a play off ocasión in Spanish, or in English meaning occasion. So it's kind of like rise to the occasion, rise to the Ocasio, because that's her last name. And so just really, and she's 28, and so she's one of those people that makes you feel like really inspired, but makes you feel like shit. Because, you know, I'm 28, and I'm like, oh my God, like, we're the same age. And she's, like, doing big things. And so, but I love being able to have people who can inspire you and challenge you and make you feel like, you know what, I can do this too. And so, definite big shout out to Alexandria. Definitely you know, we need more people like her who speak for the community and who come for the community. And hopefully this is a shift to a new movement where people who are tired of having other people who don't share their experiences make decisions for them. And so shout out to her, shout out to New York, and let's hopefully keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I think one thing that I think is super interesting about that is that people, the fact that people are saying, like, don't waste your money on people that are not likely to vote. Yeah. And I think that one thing that we're kind of taking for granted is that people are not voting because they are not inspired to vote by the people running. So it's like, if I don't have faith in you as a person, so I'm not going to, well, one, I guess if we saw in the instance of Bernie Sanders, like, they felt like they wasting their vote or whatever. But if you put someone out there, put someone on the ballot that people can get behind, they will get behind them.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, hopefully we'll see more of that happening. More young people kind of just, you know, I mean, it's a risk, but, you know, just go for it. What do you have to lose?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so now we'll transition into our In the Know segment. Okay, so now we are transitioning into our In the Know segment. And first, we are going to talk about double standards. So, former teacher Tiffany Eichler was sentenced to 30 days in jail after admittedly having sex with 3 of her male high school students. She has stated that the boys came on to her. And so, when I was watching this on CNN, I was taken aback by the sentence because I have seen, you know, similar scenarios involving male teachers. And I mean, literally every other SVU episode is about, you know, a male something, some kind of authority figure taking advantage of, like, a teenage girl. And so why is it okay to give a woman 30 days for, you know, an equivalent kind of, 3 boys? Like, she was just getting real loose out there. Like, she just had no fear. But I'm wondering, like, if this 30-day sentence is evidence of a double standard, like, where we don't, like, we think that teenage boys are mature enough to consent, but that teenage girls aren't. Mm-hmm. And, like, where that comes from, and how we can actually expect, you know, gender equality when we're doing things like this. Yeah. And I'm wondering, like, if it would be different if it were a man. Like, what do you think?
Well, I'm reading that her sentence includes 300 hours of community service and a $1,000 fine. And she's required to register as a sex offender for the rest of her life. And then her attorney argued that she has suffered humiliation and the loss of her career, so she didn't need a longer sentence. I mean, it passed to me. It says here that 2 of the boys were 18 and 1 was 17. So I guess, and then I don't know the age of consent in Ohio, because, you know, sometimes it can be a little lower.
And also, the boys are 18 and 17 now. We don't know how long she's been sleeping with them.
Yes, that's true.
These could have legit been all her boyfriends that she's been sleeping with since they were freshmen. Yeah. No,
I really do think that she would have gotten more heat, not only more heat from the press probably, but a harsher sentence if she was male. But I also am just kind of, like, I'm so confused at how sentencing works because, like, you can get, like, more time in jail for, stealing? Like, I just...
Having weed?
Yes, yeah. I'm just kind of like, wait, how is that, like, she had sex with 3, one of them is underage, 30 days a month in jail when people have, like, longer for, like, tickets and having a suspended license. Like, a DUI, I just don't understand. I don't know. I can't figure out how we decide these sentences. Yeah. But I do think that if she were a male teacher and it was 3 female students, they would be like, this is a pedophile. This is a serial rapist.
Yes. They'd be like, he's disgusting. Yeah. Like, lock him up and throw away the key. Our poor children. He has deflowered our poor girls.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, I mean, I don't understand.
It's just, and I mean, even like this article that I'm reading says, oh, she was married. I know.
I wonder where her husband is.
Oh
my gosh. I wonder how he feels that she preferred 17-year-olds over him.
That's so sad.
No.
It says, look, like the headlines I was read said, like, it had sex with 3 pupils, including romping with 1 boy in her office. I just feel like, were this a male teacher, we wouldn't be sexualized. Would it be
in her office? Like in her classroom?
Yeah, apparently she had sex at the school.
Oh,
like one of the encounters happened at school. But just the way that the headline says romping is like this is so sexualized and so like glamorized, and if she were a male teacher, we wouldn't be, this is not the spin that they would be taking. So I do think this is a double standard. I think that she benefited for being a woman, and if this was a man, and even if this was a man and the students were boys, like it would still be really harshly looked at. So I think
it's literally just the fact that she's a woman.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I don't know how much science there is to back this up, or like how much rigorous research has been done, but you know, it has been argued that molestation is cyclical. You know, is that like people that are molested, people that are raped, people that, you know, all of these different things, they tend to be those same people that do that to other folks as well. So if we're thinking about how these little boys are going to grow up, and, you know, the way that they'll approach, you know, the way that they'll approach sex in the future, you know, we have to take things like this into consideration. Yeah, no,
definitely a double standard. I think that, you know, Ebony and I are all about gender equality, and being gender equality, we also call out whenever we feel that, even if it benefits in this situation, it benefited her. I would argue that that's not equal, and that, I mean, you and I were talking about how even beyond how this is perceived in the criminal justice system, just how it's perceived by the public, like, those boys are probably viewed as like accomplishing something good, and she's whereas a girl would be viewed as like being tainted and being broken and being like destroyed, and I just don't see that same narrative for these boys. So I think it's double standards all around, double standards probably for the victims, double standard for the perpetrator, and double standard in how this story is even being presented.
Okay, so speaking of double standards.
Yes, so recently in social media and on CNN and on 45's Twitter feed, if you haven't been paying attention, so if you don't know who Maxine Waters is, she has been a very vocal woman. She is known for, like, I mean, I have a lot of good quotes that she says. She has no problem being critical, no problem in calling out the president, no problem calling out his administration, and so she got what I would call scolded by Republicans and Democrats, because she's a Democrat, and she got kind of like rebuked by her own party, including Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, to apologize for rebuking calls of quote-unquote civility and urging people to confront those who work for 45 and tell them how they feel about the immigration policy. So at a rally, she basically told people, in response to, if you had heard, some of his cabinet members being heckled in public. So Sarah Sanders was refused service at a restaurant. The Homeland Security Secretary, she was like kind of like booed out of a Mexican restaurant. And so she was just kind of saying that, you know, if you see them out in public, then feel free to push back and tell them how you feel about this immigration policy. So she said, let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anyone from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them that they're not welcome anymore, anywhere. We've got to get the children connected to their parents. So she's saying that, like, this is a way we can pressure the administration to deal with the about 2,000 children who have been separated from their parents and haven't been reunited. And so, in other words, she told them to do unto the Trump administration as they have done unto others. And then in terms of talking about civility, she said, if you want to talk about civility, so this is her response to people telling her she should support talks of civility and not tell people not to be civil. You start with the President of the United States and you implore him not to continue to promote violence, not to continue to provoke divisiveness, and then I think he would be a better example and people would follow a better example rather than get trapped into what he's advocating, which is pure violence. So, Ebony, do you think that this is a double standard, that the president kind of gets praised and told, like, this is who he is, this is why people voted for him, this is his character, and when Representative Maxine Waters does it, people tell her she's being out of line and she needs to apologize?
Yes, I think this is a double standard, and I think it's very patronizing, and I think that and sexist. And if we're talking about intersectionality, racist, because I think that Donald Trump has been given so much leeway in terms of the way that he talks about people and the way that he incites violence. So if you can recall, during his campaign, he encouraged his base to use the Second Amendment against Hillary Clinton simply because he felt like she was potentially infringing upon their gun rights or their rights to bear arms or whatever. And then also recall that he encouraged his rally attendees to use violence against a Latino reporter. And there were also countless other instances during his campaign where he encouraged his base to abuse liberals and peaceful protesters, told them to punch people in the face. So, plenty of his... now it's easy to say, right? So there are people that, like some of his administrators saying, oh yeah, I wish he hadn't said that. That was also wrong. But are you asking him to apologize?
Yeah.
No, you're not. Because it's perfectly fine for a wealthy white man to encourage people to be violent. And also, Angela Rye was saying that those words were taken out of context.
Yeah.
That Maxine Waters was not saying be violent.
No.
She was just saying don't just take this lying down.
Yeah.
Speak up.
Yeah.
And so suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, the black woman, she's sicking liberals on us. Like, what?
Yeah. Now, when she meant push back, she meant like...
Yeah.
Push back,
everybody...
speaking, not like literally push back. And like... At a Maxine Waters speech, never have I heard that someone punched someone. Yeah. Whereas at a Trump rally, we have heard that someone had been punched. And I think I feel like this is a huge double standard for exactly the reasons that you pointed out. One, that I think that a lot of people in the Republican Party are never, ever, ever going to turn their back on the president and never gonna call him out on what he says. Like, he could literally be shooting people in the street and people will just say, like, I don't know, they'll find a way to spin it, but that he loves America. I feel like it's also sexist because their administration is sexist. He does a lot. I feel like sometimes it is okay for men to be more aggressive and assertive and to say certain things, and it is not okay for women to say certain things. And then even though people are claiming that it has nothing to do with race, and people who claim it has nothing to do with race are usually white people. And this is not to say that all white people are equally unaware of how the role that race plays. But if you are white in this country, you do not experience anything the same as people who are racial ethnic minorities. So for a lot of them, a lot of their experiences they don't see how their they don't have anything to do with race, because white, if you listen to our episode last week, we talk about whiteness and how it's viewed sometimes as a default, and it's viewed as a normative, and it's viewed as just kind of like the reference. And so if your life has been the normative referent group, then everything just seems like this is the way that it is. And so for us, people of color who have not experienced the same experience, we definitely see the role that race plays. And so I think for people of color, it is easier for us to pick up on how this has a lot to do with her race, and the fact that she is a black woman saying something and standing, because she's literally saying, she's not even saying the same thing that 45 says, because 45, literally, like you said, kind of urged people to use violence, whereas she's saying, call them out. So I think this is a huge double standard. I think that this kind of highlights the great divide in this country, which is that there is not one America. There are different Americas. There is an America that certain people live in that align with Trump and his base, that will never be impacted personally by his policies. And then there is an America where it's all the rest of us. And it's not just people of color. It's people in the LGBT community. It's people who are part of religious minorities. It's, in some cases, women in terms of reproductive issues. And so we just don't share, we're not living the same experience. And so this is definitely a double standard. And it's just so frustrating, and it kind of creates this feeling of what we're going to talk about in our main discussion of just feeling so overwhelmed with this constant just helplessness of seeing things that don't make sense and seeing things that just don't align with what I believe in and what I want for this country to be.
And what the country claims that it believes in.
Yeah. And then what you and I were talking about before we started this recording is just kind of the insult and the patronizing that we're so... we're not aware of what's really happening.
Yeah,
and
it's telling you to your face, this is not happening.
Yeah.
What is literally happening behind their back.
Yes.
They're standing in front of this burning house, and they're the house is not burning.
Yeah, the president has never incited violence. Cue clip of president inciting violence. Well, that was bad, but when has he done it as a president?
Said that.
Cue clip of
Imagine if Obama had urged that Trump apologize for, all the things that he said about Obama's base and all that stuff. Could you imagine it? No, you could not imagine it, because white men have the ability to do that very same thing. But if you are non-white, if you are non-white and not a man, you are told to apologize, because that's what women are supposed to do. Women are empaths. They're supposed to be apologetic. Yeah. And they're supposed to take orders from white men.
Yes.
No. What?
I just find it so... And to me, what was more disheartening was that her own party members turned their back, which just proves to show you can't try. We live in different we experience different Americas. So Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, yes, they are Democrats, but they are also white people, and they will not be personally affected in the same way that Maxine Waters will be affected by the things that Trump says or the things that have happened in this country. And I think even white people themselves would be aware and say, okay, historically, yes, our ancestors have had different experiences, but it's just so frustrating that there's words, facts, videos, evidence, all these things. When has not someone said hey, maybe the president should apologize for saying we can grab them by the pussy. Maybe we should apologize for making fun of people with mental disabilities. Maybe you should apologize for saying that people from some African countries come from shithole countries. Maybe he should, the list goes on. And then he goes and calls Maxine Waters saying she has low IQ.
And there is literally evidence of Trump saying all of these things. He's literally on video saying these things, and he says, oh no, I didn't say that. Yeah. I said X, Y, and Z. Or, oh no, I said this, but what I meant was X, Y, and Z. Or this stuff that he just said a month ago about Mexicans. Oh no, I was talking specifically about MS-13. No, you weren't. You're literally on tape saying these things.
Yeah.
has he ever he's like, or when he was on stage, he was speaking at some rally 2 weeks ago, and he said, where he called, who's the woman that he keeps calling from Nevada, is she from Nevada, who he keeps calling Pocahontas?
Oh, no, that's Elizabeth Warren.
Okay, yes. So he literally calls Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, right? And then he goes to a rally in Nevada and then calls her Pocahontas again and is like, oh, yeah, they wanted me to apologize for that. And I apologized. And then in the next sentence, calls her Pocahontas again. Like, so he just doesn't take it seriously. It's so condescending. It's so condescending. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I'll apologize because you said to apologize, but then I'm going to continue with the same behavior.
Yeah. No, it's a huge double standard, and I think that for a long time, I was like, because of Michelle Obama, was like, when they go low, you go high. No. But now I'm kind of like, that does not work with this administration.
Charlamagne said, when they go low, I'm going to take it to the flow. That's what we're going to do.
We are not by any means saying that is like a race divide where automatically, like, you're here, you're there. We're just saying that in this world where Ebony and I are just personally impacted in the same way that Maxine Waters is impacted, I have found that going high does not get me anywhere with this particular administration.
No, this is limbo.
Yeah, and if you are not part of those people who are part of this, who are Trump supporters or who are not critical of Trump, then this isn't about you. But this is definitely, this fight is against those who are literally sitting there saying this president has done no wrong and she should apologize.
Yeah, no. Just think. How low can you go? Can you take it to the flow? Because I can. I can. That's what we're going to do. Being the bigger person.
Yeah, so 2 cases of double standard, one a little lighter than the other, well, at least for me, but definitely something to think about and something to set us up for our following conversation on just numbness and if we are just getting numb and what do we do as a result of this numbness. And so this concludes our In the Know segment, and stay tuned for our What's Being Slept On.
So I strongly suggest that you wake the fuck up.
Okay, so now we are going to transition into our What's Being Slept On segment, where we are going to be answering the question, are we numb?
Yes.
But first, we're going to, give some context and talk about what we mean by that. And This is something that Zelma got from the dictionary.
Yes. So there's 2 definitions, and the first is just the general definition of of numbness. And so basically the dictionary.com says that numbness means deprived of the power of sensation. And then I looked specifically for emotional numbness because I feel like although deprived of the power of sensation does kind of summarize how it feels sometimes to be numb, I wanted to see what the definition of emotional numbness was. And so I found this on the internet as well. So it says, when you are emotionally numb, you may feel hollow or dead inside. You may feel that everything you are experiencing is not real, and you may feel disconnected from yourself and the people and the world around you. In a nutshell, being emotionally numb is similar to being a robot. And so in this section, we just wanted to talk about just, numbness, what it means to be numb, how it feels. And I think it's just because now in week 13, there have been some topics, and not just topics in this podcast, but I think now just everyday life and under this administration, where it just feels that there's so much negative things that sometimes you feel like you're overwhelmed, and there's just so much negative that it's is there going to be a time where it just becomes too much and then you can't feel anything? Yeah. So we just kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. So that's the context to what we mean by when we're talking about numbness and emotional numbness. And so we're just going to kind of have a conversation just about what we think that means.
Yeah, and I also don't think that sometimes, the way that I think about numbness is like, it sounds so negative, and I don't want to demonize it, because I do think that it is, or can be viewed as like a coping mechanism, because like Zelma is saying, this can all be so overwhelming. And I do have moments where I get very overwhelmed, or days where it's just too much and I'm just like crying, and it's like there's just too much negative energy everywhere. If you turn on the news, every story is about, someone getting killed, or some suicide, or some like just mistreatment of people, or some kind of like unfortunate event. There is very little positive that's being highlighted in the media these days, and so to me it's understandable to get to a point where it's just like, dang, this is too much, and you kind of just, whether you're actively turning it off or it's your body's natural kind of response to being emotionally overwhelmed, to kind of shut off. It's something that is understandable, but that we still need to bring awareness to, so that we recognize when we are growing numb, we recognize and kind of check ourselves on, like, okay, well, why am I not feeling, why doesn't this make me sad? Like, why doesn't a little kid being killed make me sad? That should make you sad. And I think that we also allow ourselves sometimes to be numb so that we don't feel implicated in some of the things that were happening, and so that we don't feel guilty, and so we don't feel compelled to do something about it. Because I do think that should also be a response, is that, okay, so this is wrong, what that's happening, right? And you have to feel that, and you have to allow yourself to feel that in order for you to respond, and in order for you to be called into action. Even if it's not you going out and standing in the street and protesting, but you calling, your local, some kind of government official to help do something about it, I think are acceptable reactions. And if there's no reaction, then it's probably because you are numb.
Yes.
I think that maybe starting in the 90s, when like gaming became really popular, and playing like PlayStation, Xbox, and all that stuff became really popular, and video games like Grand Theft Auto. I remember when Grand Theft Auto came out, and you were just saying all over the news that like, oh, this is making kids more violent, or oh, this is desensitizing kids to violence. Those conversations are still happening. I don't think that they're as common, but even with like what's that game that my brother plays, the like military one, Call of Duty. Yeah, so I've heard some conversation surrounding that video game about how this much exposure to violence can make, can have these impacts on kids. And so I was reading an article on Psychology Today, and is it Psychology Today or is it Psychology Now?
I think there are two things.
What was I looking at? Psychology Today. And, this article is discussing how all of this violence portrayed in the media could be making us numb to violence, to like actual everyday violence. And so one of the things that they discussed is that the average American child will see 200,000 violent acts and witness 16,000 murders on TV by the time they're 18. So that, in and of itself, is scary.
Mm-hmm.
Because parents, I'm assuming, probably do try to make some effort to shield their children, because you want to protect your child's innocence, right? But if your child is witnessing murder on television, that has to be having some kind of effect on their psyche. I don't really think that there's any way around that, and so they say that a 2009 study by Brad Bushman and Craig Anderson found that exposure to gratuitous violence in the media reduces the aid offered to people in pain. In one experiment, those who played violent games took longer to help an injured victim, rated a fight as less serious, and were less likely to hear the fight in comparison to participants who played non-violent video games. Another experiment found similar results when participants watched a violent movie. So exposure to violence in the media numbs us to another's distress and can lead to the dismissal or not even noticing another's pain. So kind of taking a step back, right? So there's a lot of a lot of studies out there that do say that playing these video games encourages encourages violence in children, or incites violence in children. And this study is saying that, moving us away from that argument, that maybe these people themselves are not necessarily committing violent acts, but when they see violence being committed, or they see someone in pain or in distress, they aren't, they don't feel compelled to go and help that person, because they're desensitized to it. They're desensitized to violence or to pain because they see it all the time in video games, all the time in the media, that it doesn't, there's something off in their brains, that maybe they don't necessarily have control over, where they aren't triggered. And so in this article, they go on to say, so who is responsible? And basically they conclude everybody, everybody's responsible. Parents who don't inveigh against children playing with guns, those in the media whose sole purpose is to increase profits, and so they're, depicting all this violence on television. Artists who can't distinguish between the right to create and what is right to create. So, that goes for all these rappers that are glorifying and promoting violence, even though a lot of times they don't commit the violence themselves. And then they're like, oh my God, it's not my job to be a role model for your child. Okay, fine. Gun enthusiasts who make a fetish of guns, an industry that makes billions from selling guns to civilians, and a society that mythologizes gunslingers and gangsters. So it's like, you might be thinking that you yourself aren't doing that much. Like, you yourself aren't doing all the work of promoting gun violence or whatever, but you could just be one small piece of a puzzle, and so all of these things contribute. All of these things are bad, and all of these things are promoting violence in our society, and I think are, at the core of why we are becoming so violent. So cultural change needs to take place. Cultural change does take place when people say enough is enough, and so we have to speak up. And evidence shows that we've had more than enough of violence. It's making us coarser, harsher, and less humane. So some of the events over the past month that have kind of, whether or not they're violent, they have been inhumane, and we should have been triggered by them, but they kind of were in the media for a day, and then, it was kind of fleeting. We aren't thinking about it anymore. So like the Santa Fe shooting, are we desensitized to school shootings at this point? Are we not just completely disgusted by people who are killing kids? The immigrant detention and family separation. It's like that was all over the news over the last 2 weeks. And now it's, now we're on to, granted, talking about Maxine Waters, it sucks what they're doing to her. But don't let them distract you from the fact that there are still more than 1,000 kids who are separated from their parents. A lot of those parents have been deported. You think they have the funds to come back to the United States and fight for their children? No, they do not. XXXTentacion, murdered. Everybody was so distraught about it, because apparently everybody's kid is his biggest fan. And that we aren't talking about that anymore. Antoine Rose, murdered. The associated protests, that isn't in the media, and those are still happening. The officer who murdered him was charged with criminal homicide. We need to be pushing for him to be found guilty. We need to those conversations surrounding his murder need to persist. Junior, the 15-year-old killed in the Bronx, that video, I don't know what possessed me. What in God's name possessed me to watch that video?
Yeah, I didn't know what it was until I saw it.
Yeah, and I was like,
I just didn't believe. I was like,
I'm really watching this?
Yeah, I just didn't.
I'm really seeing this kid be.
It was terrible. I couldn't. It was terrible.
All the footage that has emerged over the last week, from the bodega, and how they literally drugged this kid by his feet out of the store, and then killed him, and then also, the people standing around recording and not doing anything. So you are more pressed to get this on social media than you are to help this kid to survive.
Yeah.
Just standing by while he's one being stabbed, and then also while he's bleeding out.
Yeah.
So like you're there for the actual act, and then you're there for the aftermath, and you're doing nothing. And then the cops just standing by, like this oh my god, this like dying kid has to walk himself to the hospital. So I'm imagining that he's walking down the street, passing cars, passerbyers looking at him, doing nothing. All of these people, that is numbness.
Yeah.
How can you just watch somebody dying and do nothing?
Yeah. And then even in the XXX Tentacion murder, there's lots of people who were just like, he had been shot in his car, and like so many people were just recording his dead body. Because at that point, I'm pretty sure he was dead, or like almost dead. But they were just recording him, and like no one was like trying to do CPR. One person checked his pulse, but people were just on their phones recording it. And
everybody wants to get this shit on Instagram Live. Like, what is wrong with you? What is, I don't know. I don't understand how people, because this is our generation. Like I was gonna say young people, but like this is us. Like, how do you not understand that this person is not coming back?
Yeah.
This is not a movie. This is not fiction. Like this is real life. This person is gone. And you stood there and recorded it so that you could post it online.
Yeah. And the fact that IG doesn't scrub it. Like, so many people...
Yeah, it's like they're implicated in this as well.
So many people circulated it, and I just don't... I feel like if people reacted to these videos in a way that was like... I don't know. I was looking at the GoFundMe page, and, now it's at $300,000. And so I feel like...
With which GoFundMe page?
Junior's GoFundMe page for his family. And they asked for $15,000, and it's now at $300,000. And I think a lot of why it's gotten a lot of recognition is because people see how fucked up it was. But I just don't think that you have to show the murder. I don't think that you have to show him like actually bleeding out. And then what makes me sick too is the fact that even beyond the people recording, like in the security cameras, they show that he came back into the bodega, and the people didn't even, after he had been stabbed, didn't even render him help. So even people who were like, how are people going to go against gangs,
telling him
to leave,
you can see them hand signaling to leave.
Yeah.
So it's like, I've been seeing people saying, well, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, they have a knife.
And it's like, at what point did we get to this point in society where we can see someone dying and we are more concerned about the shit in our store than we are about somebody literally bleeding out?
Yeah. Like,
this is a kid, and these are people that are supposed to be servicing the community. So you're in this community, and I'm not 100. I don't know what these people's like ethnic background is, but based on my own, like, I don't know what it's like in the Bronx, and like maybe they have people from the community running those stores and all of this stuff. But where I'm from, that's not the case. You have outsiders that come in that run the like local corner stores and stuff like that, and don't feel any kind of connection or any kind of responsibility to the actual community. They don't feel any kind of connection. They're about protecting their merchandise. And that was evident in this video. And if they are from the community, that's even worse.
Yeah, no, the mom said that because he lived near there.
Yeah, so they probably knew this kid.
No, the mom said that they knew him, and that's why because I saw a video where she went back to the bodega, and they called the police on her, and the police were like, okay, you need to leave, you're trespassing. And she was showing them a video of him, like, trying to get behind the counter, of them pushing him out.
Video, yeah.
And she was like, they knew him. Like, they know us.
So then all that stuff is BS. Like, because I've been seeing so many people like, well, you can't, like, talking about business owners and how, business owners shouldn't be held accountable. Like, they're just, regular humans protecting their business and all of this stuff. And it's like, no, like, they're trying to create this separation or distance themselves from this child and act like they didn't know. Like, oh, there was so much going on we didn't know. And it's like, no, if you know this kid and first of all, you should feel compelled to protect a child because you knew he was a kid.
Yeah.
So at what point do we not feel urged to protect a child? And why is it that, Black and brown kids don't get to be kids?
Yeah.
Like, but once they're like 12, we see them as adults.
Yeah.
Like, no, you should be feeling like you need to protect them. I don't understand what adulthood means anymore. I don't.
Well, it's different. And then the police shooting videos, the Antoine Rose video, all the countless videos that we've seen of people being shot, and then to know that they either eventually died at the hospital or that's where they died. And so I think with Antoine Rose, I was reading about the autopsy, and they were saying he got shot in his face, in his arm, and in his back, and the shot in his back is what killed him. And just thinking and I remember, I saw the video too, and even seeing the video, you don't process, you just hear 3 shots, and you're like, oh shit, it happened so fast, how do I register it? They're just shooting at him. But then reading the article and being like, okay, those 3 shots, 1 shot was in his face, 1 shot was in his arm, and 1 shot killed him. He died. And we just get so used to it. And we just, like we said, we become numb. And I don't know if it's there is a point where as a person you can't handle too much. So as a defense mechanism, your body's response is to go numb. And this has been evident in people who have been tortured and people who have been abused, that after a while they have to go numb in order to just kind of survive. But it's kind of well, that's a bad thing. Then what can we do? How responsible can we be? Whose job is it? Is it Instagram's job? Is it?
No, it's our job.
Yeah, it's
our job.
And like they said, it's everyone's responsibility. So it's everyone's responsibility.
Yeah, there's no. We ultimately, the same way that we talk about all these other atrocities that have happened in different eras, right? So we talk about the Holocaust.
Yeah.
We talk about slavery, and we talk about not just the people that were committing the acts of violence, but we talk about the people that watched, right?
Yeah.
The observers, the people that knew that it was going on and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
That's how they're going to be talking about our generation.
Yeah.
They're going to be talking about this era in that way. What about the people that were there and did nothing, that said nothing?
Yeah.
That just allowed it to happen, and, kind of maybe wagged their finger or shook their head, but went on and lived their merry lives and acted like literally people are being gunned down in the street. Kids are being gunned down in the street. Parents' children are being taken from them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing they can do about it. And nobody's being held accountable. We're shocked when we see that there are charges filed against an officer.
Yeah.
That is surprising. And then we're also still not hopeful that we're still feeling like there's a potential that he could be acquitted.
Yeah. Because even apparently criminal homicide ranges from first degree murder to involuntary manslaughter, which even if he is convicted, he could get away with probation. So it's just kind of there's. And I think that adds also to the numbness, is feeling like there's what outcome do you have? Even with the Junior murder, all those 7 people who were arraigned.
They caught them like that.
Yeah. And you still don't feel even seeing that they were arraigned, seeing that they caught them, being relieved that, they were caught, that people are holding the bodega accountable, they're protesting, not allowing them to open, that councilmen are trying to revoke their permit. You just kind of feel like that doesn't take away the awful and the awful feelings of knowing that no one helped him, and being fuck, would that happen to me? If I was my kid, if it was me, because I know people who look like him, my brothers, if they were ever in trouble, would people really, just let him be murdered and not do anything about it?
And it's to go back to what Psychology Today said, they legit did an experiment, and they found that people that this exposure to this violence makes people slower to help.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you see.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you see. And then also, it's exacerbated by the fact that we have social media, and that, you know, people, not only are they, they're not just turning their backs, you know, they are looking at it happening and are wanting to capture it, wanting to be the first to post this. How can you be so, what? You mean to tell me that you are running to somebody dying so that you can post it on your social media? What kind of person are you?
Yeah.
To want to post murder on your social media?
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Like that, there's literally something wrong with all of us.
Yeah. No.
And you know, and I mean, we when it comes to cops and when it comes to police, you know, we're like, we give the police the benefit of the doubt. Well, not us sitting here. Plenty of people give police the benefit of the doubt, and we assume that that they're right in what they're doing, and that, oh, somebody must have done something wrong. And even when we see it on tape, there's still that cognitive dissonance. Like, oh, even though I see this person with their back turned, this child with their back turned, there must have been something that they did before the recording came on. There must have been something that we saw, right? And it's like, no, what you see is exactly what happened, and yet your brain is still doing the extra work of agreeing with all your preconceived notions. That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And we also need to remember that what the Nazis did to the Jews was legal.
Yeah. I mean, slavery was legal.
And these police are modern day Nazis, and we are standing by, just allowing them to slaughter black kids with no types of repercussions. And it's like, you know, it doesn't, when we see cops beating on kids, because I see those videos often, and I think that happens a lot more often, obviously, than they're killing kids. But those types of things start there. They start there. So we can't just be like, oh gosh, why is this cop punching this kid in the face while the kid has on handcuffs?
Yeah.
And then just allowing it to end there. And it's like, no, that could have escalated.
Yeah, and it's not just white cops. Like, I saw a video of a black cop that punched a kid in the face, and then I saw another video of a black cop that was harassing people on the street, like stopping and frisking them. And so it's just kind of like we just have to hold each other. Like, this is not going to get better unless we do something like this. We just, obviously sharing videos of this doesn't move people to, in the future, stop. It doesn't, knowing that police officers wear body cams doesn't lower the count.
Do anything.
Knowing that people have cell phones and can record it doesn't stop them.
They're literally on their own, like, they're literally caught on their own cameras in their cars beating on people, and it does nothing.
No, it doesn't. There's still, like, so many people that have been killed even when it's caught on video. And social media has, I think, just exacerbated the problem of numbness and allowed us to be able to just watch Junior's murder and then go see what T.I. said, go see T.I. a video of T.I. cheating on his wife, and then go see,
and
like...
it's just like, it just all blends together.
Yeah, it does.
And, you know, I think that a lot of people, you know, especially when it comes to the cops, you know, there's so much that we can do, and a lot of it are things that we don't do, maybe because we don't know or we don't take it seriously. But we need to really take more seriously these midterm elections.
Yes.
Like, and we need to, if you are dissatisfied, if you're in a county and you're dissatisfied with what's going on with your police department, you need to vote.
Yes.
You need to register to vote way before November, so that you don't get down to the last minute and are like, oh my God, I couldn't do it. Because maybe a lot of people don't know, but the district attorney is an elected position. And so if your district attorney is doing some BS and allowing these sheriffs to just run all over the place and kill people and all that stuff, vote. And make sure that they are people that actually care about the community. Because that's important. And like, I'm just at my wit's end with these cops. Like, golly, I just at my wit's end with everybody. Like, all those, I just couldn't believe that I was legit watching this video of this kid be stabbed by somebody recording upstairs. Like, you mean to tell me you can't call 911 on your phone because you want to record it first?
No, the thing that got me was when there were people recording him in the street. I know. Or even just like physically, instead of putting, recording, because I saw people like recording him in the street, and I was like, why can't you just like physically help him get to the hospital, or apply first, or do first aid, or call the cops on your phone as you're walking with this person to the hospital, or give them a ride in your car if you see someone or pointing out a police officer. And it's just, and like another thing I think that just highlights it, it's it happened in the Bronx, and so it's just kind of like it, even in your own community, where you feel like these people would have your back. You see that you can't really, and it's scary to think that you can't rely on people. Like, just because there's people around doesn't mean they're going to help you, and that
that is scary.
That is scary.
That is so scary.
I feel like do we really have to wait till it happens to someone we know? Then when we're like, oh shit, that's fucked up. I feel like our society is becoming more numb to violence. I don't think it's all video games. I think video games definitely have helped and contributed, but video games have been happening for a really long time. I think that there's an overload.
I think it's things that you that you internalize, so witnessing violence on top of having access to guns, on top of having access to like weapons, on top of there being social media and you potentially getting like applause, or like likes. These like pseudo accolades for being able to post it. All of these things together ultimately culminate in this society full of violence and numbness.
And then for us feeling like still outraged about it, then we start being like feeling numb that other people are numbed out, being like, damn, that's really how it is. People are really able to watch a murder and not do anything. Like, it adds to the overload. And like Ebony listed, like those events we talked about were recent. Like, that's not even an overview of the last year. And this is not even what happens in our personal lives. This is like what we see about people we don't know. And then you add on top of that people who live in communities, or people who live in dynamics, or people who live in family systems where there's more abuse, where there's more trauma, where there's more stress. And so thinking like, man, a lot of people are really burdened. And so I think that what we can do, because we don't like I don't want to just like be negative and negative and negative without at least some sort of like, what can we do? So for me, it's like, if you see a video and you feel nothing, then go like do something about it. Like, that's a trigger for you to be like, whoa, I should be feeling more to that than I am. And like, you can be a person who, like, if something is happening, you see someone and you see people recording, you can say like, hey, like, do something. Like, this isn't like I don't know. I feel like we need to hold people accountable. We need to not like things we need to not circulate murder videos. We need to not like them. We need to not subscribe to them. We need to not follow them. If people don't get rewarded for glamorizing someone's death, then they'll have less of an incentive to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how we achieve this, but I think we just need to understand and appreciate human life.
Yeah.
And value it. Life in general. Like, I mean, I think that we have we've distanced ourselves from other people to such an extent that we don't even relate to them. We don't even relate to their pain. It's somehow we have convinced ourselves that like, oh, that happened to that person will never happen to me, or anyone I know. And so somehow we do that, and because we do that, I think it makes that pain unrelatable. And it's that lack of relation that ultimately results in like the devaluing of life. And because I think that if we actually took time to think about how this person dying is going to affect the people around them, the people who did value them, whose life is gone, like, would we actually take the time to try to save them, or try to you know, I mean, you have to be willing to sacrifice likes on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah.
Like, life is at least worth more than that.
Yes.
And so I mean, I don't know. I feel so badly for these people. I feel so badly for these people's parents, you know, and still to those kids. And it's crazy to me that, like, even talking about the, you know, Santa Fe shooting, I, like, thought about, like, oh, you know, maybe this is old. Like, should I even mention this? And it's like, no, what? That is insane. That something can be old.
Yeah, that death could be old.
Yeah, that it's like old news, and it's like, no, that's still very relevant. There are still parents that are broken.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously. Like, so it's like, yeah, I mean, is a month ago too long to talk about it? Like, no. Because it doesn't matter how many months go by. Like, those people will not be healed.
No, I mean, for my volunteering, I work with people who have someone die through tragic death. And, you know, sometimes they're murders, sometimes they're suicides. And, you know, there are people who've been coming to groups for 5 years, and the pain does not go away.
Yeah.
And like and for me, hearing people in my groups and stuff tell me about how much pain it is helps me like humanize it. And so whenever I heard about the Junior murder, I didn't see some kid just getting, you know, murdered. I was like fully aware, like I know I've been there to see the aftermath of people losing a child through violence, losing a child that age due to violence. And it is honestly like, I'm not like hearing, when you hear a mother cry because her son died, I've never heard another sound like that in my life, and don't think I ever will. And so that sound played in my mind, and I was like, I saw him as a person. And I think that we need to connect with real people and not just the internet. And if we have these real connections with people, if we connect in a way that is more human, then maybe that's going to combat some of this numbness, and that's going to allow us to be able to react humanely. And so,
because I'm really afraid for this next generation. We you know, we're already like, you know, teenagers, a lot of us adults by the time social media came around. For these kids that are literally social media babies, like, what will they feel?
I know.
What will they like? What will move them?
Yeah, we have to watch out for them. We have to remind them like what life is like prior to social media. Yeah,
like this is real life. These are real lives that are lost, and they're like, I mean, you're talking about I don't know what we could do. We have to do something, because the world is just, the pace that we're going.
Yeah.
The purge is going to be real life.
I know. I mean, the minimal you can do is when someone talks about someone's death, when someone talks about one of these things.
When they're making light of it.
When they make light of it, when they make jokes of it, when they laugh, when they make LOL comments, when they act like this wasn't a real person. What you can do is you can check them. What you can do is you can comment on them. What you can do is you can remind them that is a person, that was a person. It doesn't matter. All the bullshit aside, like, when something dies, we should give a shit about it. And so
no matter what, like, we should care. We have to care.
So that's something small. Yeah, that's something small we can do that doesn't take too much energy. I know sometimes it's a really emotionally overwhelming to like always have to be like a justice warrior, but in your own networks, on your social networks, you can just, you know, check someone, call someone out, and just be like, this isn't okay. Report a video that you feel is insensitive. You know, unfollow pages that are making light of it, making jokes, memes. Like, there's small things that can be done. And for you yourself, just remember, like, if you feel that you're just dismissing things really, really fast and quickly, just remind yourself that we don't want to be a society that doesn't give a shit. Okay. So next week is July 4th, and we hope that you guys have whatever sort of America that you guys are living in, celebrate something. If it's celebrating, your family, if it's celebrating a loved one, if it's celebrating a relationship, you don't got to celebrate, I know sometimes it's really hard to celebrate a country where you don't feel that they necessarily have your back. So next week, Ebony and I are going to be taking a break, but it will give you a chance to
catch up.
Yeah, on our other 12 episodes, this one being 13. So as always, please feel free to contact us, email us at woke.ishpodcast@gmail.com, follow us on Instagram at wokeishpodcast, send us a DM, a comment, follow us on Twitter at
wokeishpod.
And we look forward to you. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to send them our way.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Bye.